like forever alone. But anyway,
Very
yeah,
sorry.
my name's Hunter Avalone, former conservative turned social democrat. Looking forward to talking politics today. Thanks again for having me on, Dylan.
Happy to have you on, Hunter. Now we're going to throw it over to a longtime guest on the channel, Joe Lewis, who I also went to Got Brisket with, and it was absolutely delicious.
That it was. Yeah, so somehow if you don't know who I am, I'm Joe Lewis. My Twitch channel is twitch.tv/Joe Lewis, the O being a 0. I am slowly but surely becoming a political refugee, one Twitter take at a time. So I'm happy to be here.
True. You've been a refugee from the Hans Kingdom. But one funny thing about the brisket story is there was this drama magazine publication on the internet that talks about internet people that published a story about that and used that as evidence that I am extremely wealthy compared to you, average college kid.
I remember.
They were like it was a magazine article. Dylan's income revealed, and then you read it. It was like, look, he got brisket. He seems to be very wealthy. So we figured out the economy. If you just give poor people brisket, then they're wealthy. Happy to figure it out. Brisket down economics. Now we're going to bring it to a first-time guest. Happy to finally have them on. I've been wishing and hoping to have them on for the longest time. And Kat was very lovely and helped make the connection. Throwing it over to Gothix.
Dylan, thank you so much for having me on your show. I will preface by saying debates are something that I normally don't do, but I will say that you guys are very persistent, so I am here, and thank you for reaching out. I'm looking forward to a very civil and delightful conversation.
Happy to have you on, Gothix.
Probably not.
By the way, I love you glasses.
Oh, thank you so much.
Here's the rules. The first rule, of course, is we don't break terms of service. That means no slurs, anything that would get our channel taken down. I like to eat food. It's an important part of my life, and so I would like to be able to buy food in order to do that, so I'd like to not lose my job. Second rule is when I'm talking, no one else is talking, because I am only moderating. I will never try to give my beliefs during a debate. I feel that that is a show of bias, and I would like to keep as much bias away from my moderation style as physically possible. During the start and end of the topic, I'll give you all an uninterrupted section to make a quick intro, about a minute long, and an outro. It's going to be shorter today because we have less time to talk about the issues, but do not interrupt anybody during that time. When I talk and I speak, I am purely moderating, and so when I start to speak, no matter what's happening, please quiet down because I don't want it to get too chaotic. Now, and here is a recommendation, not a rule. I do not dictate people be nice and kind to each other, right? I'm not going to police you being and make you like a good boys and girls and such. But what I am going to suggest is that you do get more people with honey than vinegar, okay? It's more successful, and to make sugar your favorite spice, always be nice. It's a recommendation, but of course, I'm not going to make you be nice to people. And so, does everybody understand the basic premise of the program? Wonderful. Any questions? No? Great. So we're going to start with the first topic. We might go into the second topic depending on how the conversation goes, and it's very simple. So recently, the culture war has evolved, and it's been a new discussion about this thing called cancel culture. And so the question is, it's very simple, broad question. You can approach it any way you want to. Has cancel culture gone too far, or is it just responsibility? It's just people being held responsible, or has it gone too far? We're going to start with Counterpoints in the top left-hand corner.
Yeah, so I think it's pretty clear, like, number one, cancel culture is real. If I hear that tonight, I will get a little fussy. Number two, I do think that it has absolutely made discourse totally toxic to the point that we can't really get descriptive reality. We've been having the same conversations for like 2 years. We've been having some of the same conversations for 5 years. And it's mostly because we're jerks to each other. So we don't really understand what the other side is saying or what they care about or their motivations or anything like that. We just kind of call everybody evil. And then we just kind of do that like, 2 to 3 times a week or a few dozen times on Twitter every single day. So that's fun. and I love yelling at people on the internet. It's one of my favorite pastimes, or else I wouldn't be here. But at the same time, I do want to deal with some of these problems eventually. Whether we're talking about like systemic racism, or if you don't like that term, like disparate outcomes for people along demographic lines, or police reform, or the war on terror, or runaway government authority. These things are serious issues that do need to be dealt with, and I would like it if we stop calling each other monsters and assholes, so we could actually get something productive done. But you know, if you want to yell at each other, I'm down for that too. So let's go.
Wonderful. Now I'm going to throw it over to Gothix.
All right. So cancel culture, has it gone too far? I don't think it should have started to begin with. I do think that cancel culture is, first of all, it's very comparable to the struggle sessions that they have during Mao's Cultural Revolution in China. On a base level of what the consequences of cancel culture is, it doesn't leave room for context or nuance. It avoids due process. As far as what is the proper punishment, how long should a punishment be for, was a crime even committed in the first place, things like that. I believe it encourages emotional immaturity. It encourages public shaming, humiliation, and it also encourages entitlement to authority. This idea that random strangers online are deserving of an apology for something that they really have no authority to police in the first place, it basically leads to bullying. It enables this bullying mentality. I also believe that this then discourages critical thinking because people are kind of reacting on this emotional basis. Now we get down to just seeing things for just black and white. Quite literally, black victim, white suspect equals something, a crime motivated by race. That lacks critical thinking to me. I also believe that this doesn't teach conflict resolution. It discourages civil discourse. And there's also no standard operating procedure for cancel culture. So to put this into context, it could be the result of cancel culture could be as simple as someone getting some mean tweets sent at them, or it could be as severe as someone losing their livelihood or them committing suicide because of the nonstop onslaught of emotional trauma. And also, I will say that canceling words are also an issue because that ties into political correctness, thus changing definitions and controlling speech. Cancel culture, to summarize, is a Marxist tactic.
Okay. Also, Gothix, could you? There's a lot of reverb in your mic. Would it be any way for you to correct that?
Oh, someone else told me that too. Hold on a second.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
While you do that, though, we have other people who are going to do intros. Hunter Avalon, I want to throw it over to you.
Yeah, honestly, cancel culture, it is pretty cringy at the end of the day, let's be honest. I think that ultimately it can lead to a lot of harm on the general discourse, but I also think that we need to be willing to have a conversation about some of these issues without going the like cancel them route. So for example, I think that there are a lot of people that want to feel special, they want to feel important, they want to feel like they're doing something. And so for them, being maybe still in school, maybe just not having anything else to do in their life, whatever, they find some kind of activism in like canceling the guy who tweeted the N-word when he was 14 or something, like something so delusional, because I've seen stuff like that happen before. But I think we have this issue where like conservatives are so hyper fixated on how bad cancel culture is, they tend to take like the opposite extreme. So like, for example, I mean, let's think about it. We had the Dr. Seuss thing that conservatives claimed was cancel culture. That was not cancel culture at all. That was literally just a private business making a decision, that it wasn't even like from public pressure. We had the Mr. Potato Head thing where they changed it to just being Potato Head for like the overall brand change, and then conservatives were like mauling on Twitter about like they're getting rid of it, they're canceled Mr. Potato. It's like, I think that we need to sort of find that balance. So like, rather than like you're a racist piece of shit because you said the N-word when you were 14, more like, hey, you're 14, you're a kid, you might not have realized that that's impactful or what that word really kind of like the weight that that word has behind it. But there's also like a conversation to be had about how we don't want to like enable racism if possible, and we want to, act appropriately if people are using slurs and whatnot. Like, I think that there's a way that we can address this that's much more productive than just canceling people on Twitter or trying to get them fired or whatever. Usually, let's be honest, based on like just a little bit of information. It's not usually like this full out thing. But at the flip side, one more thing, I know my time's running out, but the last thing too is that there are also elements of cancel culture that I think we all agree with. Like society has to cancel some people. Some people are worth canceling. Like America, quote unquote, canceled Hitler. Like there are times that we want to fucking cancel someone, but it's more about like, is this justified and is it not? And right now, cancel culture does not provide room for that.
I just want everybody to know, I also think Hitler should be canceled. I'm going to throw it now over to Joe Lewis for the last intro before we go into an open session.
Yeah, I know we usually aren't supposed to talk about people's previous statements on the opening, but I kind of disagree with this idea that Hitler got canceled by the United States. It seemed like historically he deleted his account. So I want to make sure that the record's set pretty clear. Generally speaking, with cancel culture and the culture war broadly, I think that the outrage, like, there's a few problems I have with it, generally speaking. And that is, the one thing off the top of it is that with the outrage, it's a very neutral phenomenon, right? Like, we had situations where that woman made a really insensitive Africa age tweet. She took a plane ride, came down, was already viral on Twitter. We also see situations like Kyler Murray, who basically just called people queers. That was all he said. And he was like maybe in high school when it happened, and then people tried to dig that up, and that ended up being its own little cycle. And we see situations now, literally on James Lindsay's Twitter, where he modeled a black and white Lego saying no to sexual grooming. Generally speaking, the pattern is clear, is that whether it be positive or negative outrage, those are the things that drive through algorithms so that people can see those things. And I think that social media sites like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram can do a better job at moderating content, so that's essentially consistent with their terms of service. Another thing that I think is very egregious about it, as we're seeing in Loudoun County, is that when a situation goes viral, things that are just clearly false, because it gets pushed enough, can end up being part of a discourse that it doesn't belong with. What I'm alluding to with Loudoun County is that a student was sexually assaulted in a bathroom. Their father, without any evidence, made the claim that it was a boy wearing a skirt. Then that turned into a trans person sexually assaulting someone in a bathroom, which then transformed into a bisexual biological male wearing a dress assaulting a girl in a bathroom. None of those things were true. Was there a sexual assault? Yes, but the negative outrage towards the situation started getting roped into this idea of a trans predator, and that had nothing to do with the actual situation. There was an issue with safety in the public schools. Now, the problem with that is, as I am finding, is that it's very hard once you have something that is clearly false to correct in real time. And we're seeing this with COVID-19 stuff. But generally speaking, if I were to close the weekend to opening, yes, cancel culture is real, but I do think that tech companies, mainly social media companies, can do a better job at actually doing their job in terms of moderating their terms of service and moderating users' accounts. Like, it can't just be Donald Trump that's the Pontius Pilate on this situation. Yeah. Okay.
So I just want to give some shout outs to some people in the crowd tonight. The Surfs TV, I'd like to welcome them into the crowd, as well as the contributor for the Jerusalem Post, Stoic Viper, and many others who have made the trek out to stop streaming today and watch what we're doing tonight. So I would like to thank them all for coming today. Now we're going to go into an open session. You may go back and forth. Again, I hold the rights to mute you at any time if it gets too out of control. Do your best to make it so my job is easy. Would anybody like to start us off? I'll just hand it to somebody. Okay, I'll throw it to Connor then.
Yeah, so something that I brought up in the past that I think is important here is I don't think this is like a new social phenomena. I do think that we had the ability to cancel in the past in a tribal setting that would be like the social equivalent of like exile. The thing that's new is our technological ability to inflict harm on strangers via the digital medium, and also kind of like the scale. If somebody was like doing something messed up 3,000 years ago, there's really only like 30 people that are going to be mad at you, and they're going to be your immediate tribe. Whereas now you can have hundreds of thousands of people mad at you all at one time calling for blood. So that's kind of like the real difference is the scale. One of the things that both of y'all said, both Gothix and Hunter, I think that was interesting, was you were saying that it seemed like it was driven by people who don't have institutional power, who are desperate to wield some kind of social influence, and as a result, they jump on dog piles. I think that's like a really interesting descriptor for like the social phenomena, and might lead to like a solution for how do we get people engaged in more positive ways rather than engaging in cancel culture. And then I did want to concede to Joe, for instance, like the conservative misidentification of cancel culture. Mr. Potato Head going non-binary probably wasn't cancel culture, although that might have been Hunter. But then the other thing about that too is how do we keep fucked up stories from spreading so quickly, and then how do we correct the record in such a way that people basically stop being violently shitty. Unfortunately, I spent some time on Twitter today, and people were insisting that it was their moral right to be violently shitty because the person deserved it, and I don't understand how that attitude carries towards anything positive in the future, especially when it's encouraged by some of our people.
Sure. I mean, I think that ultimately, yeah, it would be kind of stem from giving these people just like a healthier outlet for that like rage that they might feel, or that like desire to like be activists, kind of. Just like there's got to be a way to basically take that desire and that rage, because that alone could be a very valuable tool actually in fueling like good political change. But the problem is right now a lot of it is, yeah, it's just people kind of on the internet, and they can, on top of that being on the internet, they can hide behind their screen. It gets really easy to just start attacking anyone for any reason. So I definitely agree with that. Yeah, I think that there would be a way to, we would have to kind of look at ways to provide a healthier outlet. But I don't know. I think that it's just, I guess, Connor, you said that you agree with the idea that like conservatives are a little bit over the top with what they're calling cancel culture.
I think it can be misidentified sometimes, right? Like, so for instance, like cancel culture to me definitionally would involve some kind of like mob, or people coming after your job or your employment, some kind of social pressure that might be misapplied, and people basically trying to ruin your life and dogpiling you because you did something wrong, some kind of social faux pas, some kind of etiquette slip, or some kind of like a transgression against, like, from a conservative standpoint, for instance, Joe brought up that news story where it's like, hey, that this person fucked up and somebody misapplied it in a way to probably intentionally make it go viral. And then same thing with basically getting dogpiled on Twitter or whatever. It's like not everybody is caught up on the social norms du jour, and I think that's kind of like the frustration from a conservative standpoint is you can assert something that was like perfectly normal like 5-10 years ago, and it's like, hey, fuck you, you piece of shit, I hope you lose your job, and then that can obviously spiral into some super negative shit. So yeah, like, but I do think conservatives can be extra sensitive to it. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and I think that
we're gonna have Hunter respond, and I want to make sure other people got some time to speak.
Yeah, sure. I just think that ultimately, if we want to talk about like misapplying the term, I kind of feel like, not to get too spicy too quick here, but Gothix, when you mentioned they're changing definitions or whatnot, like, I'm not sure if you know, but like definitions have been changing throughout history. Like definitions are socially constructed, so usually if definitions are changing, that's just kind of like a normal thing to happen. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's like a form of cancel culture. So I wanted to push back on that a little bit.
Okay, cool. Sorry about my technical problems. By the way, is the reverb too bad? Is it good? I don't know what.
It's good enough. It's good.
I can fix with this, yeah.
Okay, cool. So changing definitions, that I reject that as because by that context, that would mean I could change the definition of murder, right? I can just say, oh no, this is cuddling. This is cuddling now. And I know
Well,
that
which definition are you referring to that's been changed specifically?
okay, I'll
Like
give you
because
my
of political
favorite one.
correctness.
The definition of racism and this idea that power and privilege need to both be available in order for someone to have the ability to be racist. Thus, me as a black person, I'm apparently by this definition incapable of being racist.
Well, I agree that that's kind of silly, but at the same time, that's not like a definition that's been changed for the sake of political correctness. So what you're referring to is much more of like a academic definition that people try to use for racism that is usually rejected or just not even known about by the general population. Like if you look up the definition of racism, it has not been like altered and changed because of political correctness. And again, I want to just like point out that repeatedly throughout history, words have had their definitions changed. The definition for awful changed. The definition for cute, fantastic. I'm literally reading a little list here from like this thing about all these words that have just changed definitions over time. So it's not like a single person is just like, today, the definition of murder is that I'm going to be really nice to everybody. So I murdered someone today, guys. When I'm talking about definitions change, and what it sounds like you're talking about is like broadly, societally speaking, definitions changed. But that happens with any society.
So then I would push back and ask why, what is the purpose of changing these definitions? What is that intended to do? Why are the definitions we currently have not good enough?
It would purely depend on a case by case basis there.
But why would
Yeah.
we need to change them if there's no, like, what is the purpose? What does it do?
Well, it depends again what you mean by like changing definitions. So it's not like we're all going to sit in a room and be like, I vote to change this definition, but it's like throughout time, the definitions of words change and the meaning, the way that we interpret them also change. It's
Okay.
much more of a broad thing. It's not like today this word means this kind of thing. It's more of like how society evolves, how it changes. The
Well, if
definitions
we
of
use
words
the
just kind of change.
if we use the definition, if we use racism as an example here, we kind of agree that there's a lot that encapsulates that word, and it's not exclusively a interpersonal phenomenon. And this is basically how end up in social science. And then through social science and other sciences, we found that like, okay, there's different ways of explaining this word and explaining this phenomena. We're going to use racism as the word that we attach to it, but add other things like systemic racism, interpersonal racism, structural racism. And those have different definitions and different interpretations when we're trying to observe reality. The problem is, as we saw with critical race theory, is that when you have something that has a very broad definition based on a social science, and then when you try to explain that to individuals and laymen, it can be very difficult to break that down. And even Chris Rufo admitted that, where his purpose for challenging critical race theory was to dilute the word so much so that it's just used as a catch-all for anything involving any type of observation about race in the United States. That's why you get simultaneously people saying, okay, there's like systemic racism is real and that's something we ought to observe. And then another side is saying, well, critical race theory, so I meant to say critical race theory is this idea of like observing structures of power and things of that nature, while at the same time people saying, well, CRT teaches white people to hate themselves because they're white. And then you get the other side going, well, that's not what that means. And then the other side says, well, that's exactly what that means. Like, look at this, this, and that. It's clearly saying that. And then you get this back and forth where we never really get to the context of like why individuals are saying the things that they're saying. And then that just leads to the discourse being very diluted.
Yeah, Joe, can I? This is actually perfect. You kind of put the primer on the situation. This is why literally in my intro I use the term systemic racism and disparate outcomes separately, because I knew that would mean two different things to two different people, two different audiences that we're basically talking to, assuming that Gothix has like more libertarian or centristy or right-wing audience, right? So basically, I've been swimming in lefty circles for the better part of 6 months, and through these like debates or whatever, like I understand that when we're referring to systemic racism in this space, we're basically talking about like, how does the system work? How does it screw people over? And how does it screw people over disproportionately based off of demographic, right? That's what I understand systemic racism to be.
Thank you, Connor.
But But at the same time, I'll walk into a libertarian space or a centrist space or a conservative space, and I'll say, systemic racism, means this definition, and they'll be like, oh, well, to me, this is just the Marxist tactic of changing words and all that kind of stuff. And racism is typically interpersonal. And on top of that, if the system isn't intentionally racist, then how can it be systemically racist? If the point of the law, like, so for instance, like homicide being one of the obvious ones, if homicide is a bad thing, we make a law saying that homicide is bad across the board, and then it screws over certain people disproportionately. How is that law's fault, right? Now that might be like a low resolution photo of the situation, but then that's where for me it's like we get into this fucking fight like almost every single conversation where we're like, you're a racist piece of shit, you're denying reality, you're anti-science, you're anti sociology, you fucking hate knowledge or something like that. And realistically it's like, I don't give a fuck what we call it, right? As long as we acknowledge there's a problem, because if we can acknowledge that there's a problem, then maybe we can start working on a solution. But as we all know, because we're all on twitch.tv and we're all on twitter.com, nobody really gives a fuck about solutions. Nobody really gives a fuck about fixing the situation. They want to fucking make money off of being dicks about the situation. And then that's kind of what pisses me off, especially when it comes to the pundit class, when the fucking, because I consider myself a part of the pundit class, is where like we don't like, okay, so there's disparate outcomes for people for different demographics. What the fuck are we going to do about it when we don't agree on how to run our society? And that's kind of like the question we never even get to.
Right.
Yeah, or even a situation where, and this is the thing that I want to give credit to, because I think that the right wing right now is winning the culture war when it comes to like sort of the political activation aspect. They clearly galvanized school boards across the country and individuals parents who've never been to school board meetings in a way to push these ideas that they're against, like the idea that trans students should be able to use bathrooms based on their gender, their affirmed gender, critical race theory, COVID-19. They're winning that battle in real time. The problem is, as we saw, is that when they finally get to the board meeting and speak their grievances and start participating in the political system, they start finding out that these systems that they're trying to sort of quote unquote take back don't really work in the way that's intended. As an example, to go back to Loudoun County, Beth Bartz is one of the school board members who resigned. And now there's a conspiracy theory that they're calling a conspiracy theory that the school board is just going to insert a member in there that they like in order to continue pushing their agenda. And someone who knows about how ejected board members work in councils and school boards, I'm like, yeah, they vote the interim member in to complete the term because the election is literally next week, and then it's open to the public in the next election cycle. That's just par for the course. And now they're painting that like the school board is so corrupt that they're just going to insert another person that they like. And it's like, of course they're going to do that. If you're in a school board, you want someone in place to make sure they can continue the interim term and then leave it open up to the people to vote again. That's just common procedure. But the lie is that, which has a hint of truth to yield some ground here, is that of course they're going to fill that position with someone they feel is competent, but it's not some cabal that they're going to just shadow do it. Like, it's open to the public, but it's pretty much implied that the person that they want is already tapped.
Okay. Right. Gothix, you haven't had a time to speak in a while. I want to make sure if you want to.
Well, first of all, how's my mic?
Your mic sounds perfect now.
Yeah, all right, cool. That was my fault. User error. Okay, so I want to circle back really quick. I don't remember who said it. It could have been Hunter or Joe. Well, obviously, because you're both on the other team. But someone said something about like the situation with Mr. Potato Head and the cancellations of, I forgot who's the one that said that.
Dr. Seuss, yeah.
Okay, yeah, Dr. Seuss cancellation, and then private businesses stopping that manufacturing of that particular book. I should have added this to my introduction, but all of these topics that we're debating tonight, for my whole argument, are all interconnected, and they need one in order for the other to operate. So in terms of private businesses, I first of all, I would not call that cancel culture. I would call that more of political correctness. But I would say that in that scenario where Dr. Seuss, they pulled the book off the shelves, they said, we're not going to offer that anymore. Yes, it is a private business, but the question is, how did that business come to that conclusion? It was by mob rule. It was by social pressure.
So I don't even
Well-
believe there was any controversy actually at all involving the Dr. Seuss thing. There was only controversy after it was actually the foundation, the Dr. Seuss Foundation, his family, the person who had legal trust of his works, decided that with the COVID-19 things and with the uptick in hate crimes against Asian Americans, they didn't really like the fact that one of the lesser known Dr. Seuss books had some like pretty outdated depictions of Asian individuals. This was a decision made by the company that this was not mob rule. And the same thing with the Mr. Potato Head thing. They didn't even make him, that wasn't political correctness. They didn't change him to anything. All that they did was change the brand name to Potato Head because it's an umbrella name for Mr. Potato Head and Mrs. Potato Head. That's all that happened. But again, it's a perfect example of how when it comes to the cancel culture thing, or with the conservative side, I guess the outrage about cancel culture, it all seems to be based on like very little knowledge of the actual situation.
Well, can I respond? Am I allowed to do
Of
that? I
course,
don't know.
yes.
Okay, cool. In terms of the business and the foundation coming forward, I checked. I forgot what site it was, but you can check how many books are purchased, and those particular books that they had taken off the shelves hadn't been purchased in years. So
Why does
this
it matter?
is. Well, like I said, it's all interconnected. So in terms of we need to call this book out, we need to stop selling this book. Well, no one was talking about the book. So my question is, what is the purpose of calling it out? But I saw the internet outrage. So I know that was connected to that decision to take it down. As far as the Mr. Potato Head, well, first of all, the previous, that is a form of political correctness. And the other, where Mr. Potato Head, that is a form of indoctrination. Again, another Marxist tactic.
How is that
Well,
indoctrination?
let's let her finish. She said it. Let's let her expand.
Sure.
I'm
So
kind of interested too.
I think someone mentioned in here critical race theory. They also have this idea of queer theory in academia. They have other things like anti-racism. And if you actually read the text, all it is political correctness. It is enforcing identity politics, which is basically having you obsessed with immutable characteristics, nothing based on your merit, your values, your beliefs, your qualifications, nothing like that. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. The Mr. Potato Head is just adding to
Yeah.
the.
Well,
I need to
there's
push back.
something.
No. Sorry,
Sure.
I gotta push back against that hardcore because that's just factually incorrect in every conceivable way. So, no, this is not some indoctrination of queer theory. I'm literally reading here right now from AP News just because I wanted to double check because I did a video on it a while ago. All they did, it was announced today that the Potato Head brand name and logo are dropping the Mr. They're proud to confirm that Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head aren't going anywhere and will still remain Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head. It was the umbrella name that changed to Potato Head, and then there was still going to be a Mr. Potato Head and a Mrs. Potato Head. There was not a non-binary Mr. Potato Head introduced here. Like, this is not indoctrination, and if that would be like such a reach to claim it was.
Okay.
I think that there's something to that, though.
Thank you for agreeing.
I didn't. I just said okay.
Yeah, no, but I think
Joe,
there's something to that there, right? Where it doesn't necessarily matter why they're doing it, because in a way you could say it just is trying to drive profit margins. Like, even if we're looking at the idea of Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head, right? Because if I believe, let me just state something off the fact, because my brain's kind of going like 10 miles a minute here. I believe that these companies don't give a shit about civil rights issues, political issues, social justice issues. I think they don't give a fuck. They give a shit about profits. And anything that is going to fuck with their money or help drive their money, they're going to do that. So now, on one hand, are there companies that do things with good intent? Absolutely. But as Gothix laid out here in the point of Dr. Seuss, is that sure, you can retire Scrambled Egg Super, you can retire the Cat's Quizzler, you can retire If I Ran a Zoo, but once you retire those books and give a reason why you're retiring those books, there's going to be a desire from individuals to buy out that product where available. It's no different with the Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head. It doesn't matter that Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head are staying. I think that they are well aware that they're staying, and it doesn't even matter the reason, but like whatever, due to algorithms and other things, whatever the narrative is being driven, I would argue that like predominantly the right are going to be like, oh, we got to buy out these potato heads before they're gone forever. We got to buy out these books to make sure they're not thrown to the gulags and burned forever. And do I think that these companies are functioning in a way that they nefariously are trying to do that? Yes and no. Like, I don't necessarily, it's a weird thing, right? Because I don't necessarily think that like every single company is doing this in a way to drive profits for things. I think some of them genuinely believe that these things need to be off the market, while at the same time I can recognize that there is no clean way of doing it without people sort of twisting the narrative how they please. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, Joe, I want to address this directly.
Sure, and then I want to make sure we get to the second half because we've got about 22 minutes left.
Okay. Yeah, so basically, I think you're right that some people use this social justice narratives and then the surrounding outrage in order to capitalize on it. I think that the perfect example is Gillette, where they had the best a man can get, boys will be boys commercial or whatever, where they obviously went with the progressive message. They probably knew there was going to be some level of backlash against it. Regardless of whether or not you boycotted it or bought a shitload of them, there was name recognition in the market. Whereas before, who gives a shit about Gillette, right? But then this is what's interesting to me. Is where you said the right wing is winning the culture war, maybe because they're better positioned to use institutional power. But I think what feels nefarious about it, or what feels shitty about it, is it feels inevitable. Because if you look at corporate media, or if you look at toy companies or clothing companies or anything like that, it all feels like they're you can call it a virtue signal or you can call it genuine. It seems like they're all on the same step with like the progressive message. So that's kind of where I can understand the sense of frustration from a conservative perspective, where you're just like, yo, like, what the fuck? Everything is progressive right now. It's everywhere. It's in our media. It's in our toys. It's in our marketing. It's in our TV shows. It's absolutely everywhere. And it doesn't feel organic. It doesn't feel like people are demanding it. It feels like it's being generated, and then that's kind of like it's being put down onto people versus people demanding the product. And so I have another point, but
well, I mean, like,
I want to leave it for now.
Yeah, to center my.
I have something I have something I really want to say too, real quick.
Quick from Joe Lewis, but I do want to make sure we get on to the second faction of this. So I'll have Joe Lewis and Hunter very quickly, but we do need to move on.
Well, yeah, as a center to my concern is that I don't think that the parents that are galvanized in Virginia are being politically activated in a way that I think is productive. I think they're being used for nefarious means to perpetuate lies within the right wing. And Virginia now is the center point to what the GOP is going to use in the midterms. And that's a big concern that I have, because they're getting everything that they want. They might get the governor's seat. I mean, Glenn Youngkin's leading almost by a 10-point margin now in the elections next week. But what's going to happen with Glenn Youngkin when he's dealing with the Democrat state legislature? He's just going to be blocking Democrat shit. And it's going to be the same shit that we have in New Jersey. So it's like, I'm always like, okay, you get what you want politically, but then what's the next step? Because now all these parents are galvanized. So it's like,
yeah, I just really quickly wanted to, just for my own stream, correct some misinformation that Gothix was saying before. So first of all, when we go to the Dr. Seuss thing, I just had to double check this again. Actually, there was not any big backlash that led to this. They literally said the decision was made after consulting experts and teachers. Lastly, I looked it up, and after they actually canceled those books, multiple Dr. Seuss books that were quote unquote politically correct actually spiked, and the company made a fuck ton more money solely off of just like the controversy, and some people liked it, some people didn't. But either way, this was proven to be a beneficial business move at the end of the day also. So just wanted to correct that misinformation. We can go on to the next topic.
Well, I do want to make, you called out Gothic, so I want to make sure that if she wants the time to respond, she can.
Oh, hold on. So first of all, we're debating the semantics. We're debating the definition pretty much. We're debating what occurred versus not looking at the consequence. All I'm asking is, what is the purpose of canceling these things? If it's old stuff, it was made in the 1950s and nobody reads this book, like what is the purpose of canceling? There's a point to this.
They already gave the purpose, though. They said the purpose
and you believe them.
Well, yes, because I don't live in delusion. But yeah, so they said that they thought that the books were hurtful and that they portrayed people that were wrong, and that in the midst of the controversy with the COVID-19 thing completely made sense. Again, this benefited the company, so we know the reason, and we also know it wasn't because of anything to do with a mob, but it was a decision that was made after consulting experts and teachers. I'd be happy to send you this BBC article if you want. I don't know. Do you not trust the BBC? I don't know.
No, thank you. You can keep your article. You can continue, Dylan.
Okay. We're going to go into the next topic, and it is on identity politics. The question
Lord.
is simple. Do you believe identity politics pushes people towards extremism? It's a specific question, but if you want to be somewhat broad in your answer, you can be. I'm going to go with intros. We're going to start with Gothix this time in the top right-hand corner.
All right. So as I was saying before, all of these topics tonight are going to be interconnected. So in terms of identity politics, it is exactly identical to what occurred under the Cultural Revolution of Mao Zedong, where people, well, by the way, millions upon millions of people died. I just have to add that. Individuals were classified within 5 classes of red and 5 classes of black, according to their wealth and class status before the revolution. Identity politics purposely neglects diversity of thought to push specific political gains by the facilitation of social justice. And what do I mean by this? Black lives matter, but not black Republicans, not black conservatives. Just look at the rhetoric of how people that follow this movement treat black conservatives or people like that. Another example, this trans ideology or the queer theory, what I was mentioning before. For example, infinite pronouns, this idea that there's this infinite amount of genders, trans women and men are the same exact thing, or trans women are women or whatever, while villainizing the trans people who absolutely do not subscribe to that. So again, making the point that this identity politics, the purpose of it is to push a specific type of identity, not a broad spectrum. But that's my opening.
Okay. Next is going to be Joe Lewis.
Identity politics is fine. I firmly believe that extremism, hot take, coldest take of the night, maybe the hottest or coldest, but extremism creates extremism. Right? So we have in the United States right now anti-government sentiment, anti-authority sentiment, the idea of infringement on rights and government overreach based around a lot of things like COVID-19, school boards, local governments, and sort of like too much by government, big government. We have conspiracy theories and controversial political commentary around the 2020 election, rejections or objections to multiculturalism, embraces of populism, and then like broadly speaking, the culture war trinity based on CRT, COVID-19, and gender affirmation. The right tend to call it queer theory or trans theory or gender theory, but they're all interconnected in that, like, yes, we can agree that we have our politics are influenced based on who we are. So me as a black, incredibly cis male is going to be different than Connor, who is a like. I get in trouble when I assume the race of white people. So I'm going to make an assumption that Connor is white. Maybe he's native, LSP, I don't know. Or Latino, I don't know. But it's these things, all these identifiers that we have influence our politics because our identifiers influence our relationship with these things around us. And I think that's how we navigate. My concern, however, though, is that there's this idea that I don't know how to word. I'll save it for the later. That's all I got for now.
Okay. Next is going to be over to Counterpoints.
Oh man, I am
amazing.
No, hey, you gotta give me a second to click on the mute button. Jesus Christ, don't call me a pro streamer yet. Holy shit. So anyways, does identity politics drive extremism? Yeah, absolutely. But I kind of can't wait for 2050 where white people are a minority. That way I can bitch about my station in life as fucking you don't understand my pain because I'm a fucking minority inside the United States of America. I'm very excited to say that. Like January 1st, 2050, that's gonna be the first thing I fucking say. Good morning, babe. How's it feel to be a minority in America? And then identity politics is obviously a double-edged sword. It can be used for good. It can be used for ill. I think when what we're used to is on like Twitch or Twitter or other spaces where it's like, you don't understand my lived experience, therefore you need to shut the fuck up and you cannot have an opinion on this subject because of your demography. I would see that as an absolute toxic way to use your identity. What I would see as a non-toxic way to use your identity is say, hey, listen, there's multiple variables that go into a person's personality and how they're viewed by society and how they're viewed on life. Here are some of the characteristics that I think make up my identity. Here's been my experience, and this is an experience that I share with people who share this variable with me. So while it's not representative of like a pure, like, you know, predictable algorithmic formula, this is something that we can observe through demographics and statistics and shared anecdote and all that kind of stuff. And we should address the problems and try to optimize everybody's lives. That's how I think identity politics could be used positively. As a matter of fact, to all the conservatives listening, I actually ask you to invert intersectionality on its head and start clamoring for equal male representation in female-dominated spaces using identity politics. Let's go ahead and get 50% male representation in education and, into the medical field. Let's go ahead and use our identities, not necessarily as a weapon, but as a cudgel. Because fuck it, memes are memes. But I'll leave it there and leave it for the open.
Memes are memes. Anybody want to take hold of the starting point here?
Hey, wait, I was never given an intro.
Oh, sorry, Hunter. Okay.
But it's okay. Thankfully, I don't have
anti-white racism.
So first my name's spelled wrong, and now it's... This is anti-Hunter racism. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, this isn't something that I am super, super like touchy about with identity politics. I really do agree with what Connor said, partially about how it can be a double-edged sword. There's absolutely times where you might be able to find some like commonality or community within like a shared identity or something like that. But I do disagree heavily with the idea of like, you're a white guy, so you're not able to speak about, like, that kind of shit is so fucking toxic, and it totally does harm discourse. But one more thing I want to add is that any conservative that claims about identity politics, I hope they're also willing to condemn the likes of Candace Owens and other black conservatives who will weaponize identity politics like a motherfucker. You will hear it all the time. I can't be a white supremacist. I'm black. I can't be this. I'm black. Wait, you would say this to a black woman? How many times have you heard Candace Owens say that one? Like, so I think that all the time we just have to sort of, again, find that middle ground. But yes, ultimately identity politics can lead people towards quote unquote extremism. But again, we need to look at what that means by extremism. So like if people are extreme about wanting to end systemic racism, I don't know what that would look like. Would that be like extremism in violence? Because I wouldn't be in favor of that. But obviously I want people to be extreme enough to actually advocate for like good change and good cause.
Okay. Is there anyone who now wants to take a hold of the conversation to start us off?
Me.
No, yeah.
Thank
Gothix?
you. Thank you. Cute doggy, by the way.
Thanks. It's called a pro gamer move. I learned it from Destiny.
Awesome. Get that sub. Okay. I guess I'm going to start with Joe. Joe, first, I want to know, because in your opening, you called yourself a cis male. And,
Yes.
okay.
I'm incredibly straight. Very straight.
Fabulous. So glad. But I'm curious, have you ever considered if you had to say which group of people, which body of people in terms of political leaning subscribe to this idea of saying I am cis this, what would you say?
What do you mean? Like in terms, so like to reword your question, so I know I'm understanding here. You're saying that like which group of people in the United States would affirm themselves to be cis?
Yeah. So, let me clarify. For example, I would say that I'm straight and I'm a woman, but
Okay.
nowadays you might hear I am a cis white woman in some instances, depending on who you ask.
Sure.
So we're adding that additional identifier. So I want to know would you say that this is something that is shared amongst all political parties? Is it more of a left thing? Is it a right thing? Like, what would you, based on your judgment?
I mean, cis is just an antonym to transgender, if I'm recalling correctly. I just use cis because I've always used cis. I mean, I think you're trying to allude to the idea that the term cis might almost exclusively be used on the left, but I don't think you nor I would have like enough evidence to even quantify that. Like we have enough like we have enough observable reality to maybe go like, hey, maybe this word is used in lefty spaces, but I'm sure cis is used everywhere, not just exclusively in left spaces. I don't know if that answers that question.
I only ask because I have yet to meet like a staunch Republican or like a really patriotic person who would refer to themselves as a cis man. They would just say, I'm a man, I'm a dude. So that's what I'm getting at, because I believe that type of language ties into the queer theory where it pushes a very specific political narrative.
Okay, can you elaborate on a little bit?
Go ahead.
Yeah, can you elaborate on a little bit?
Elaborate?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, yeah. So going back to my example of what, my opening statement on identity politics, where I said that identity politics focuses on immutable characteristics instead of a diversity of thought. And that is intentional because, for example, trans lives matter, but then I can go to Blair White's channel and see a slew of hateful anti-trans stuff in there. So It's clear that it's just a very specific thought process.
Well, I would push back on the idea that it's immutable characteristics, because we all have different political ideology that I wouldn't say is an immutable characteristic. Like I, for the longest time, thought there was only two genders up until I was like 25 or 26. I also believed that the clothes that women wore was analogous to their likelihood of getting sexually assaulted. These were all beliefs that I believed until I had basically a mountain of individuals in my space to push back on like these ideas are not really consistent with the reality in society and stuff like that. So like the opinions that we hold, I think are not immutable characteristics. They're just characteristics of who we are. But those ideas that I had definitely came from my socialization for sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to, so I'm sorry, go ahead. You can go.
I was hoping I could cut in a little bit on that too, because the term cis, I totally know what you mean. Again, it kind of is like, it is very derivative from more academic college sort of spaces. So it's quite possible that, there might be people like in rural areas that aren't familiar with that word and maybe don't use it in the same way. But that one doesn't mean that it's like not a word, because it is actually like a word and it does mean something. But also everybody has their own labels and ways that they identify themselves. So like some people call themselves conservative. Some people identify as Christian. Some people identify as politically homeless. Like these identities, these labels are across the board. It's just that maybe you'll see people in lefty spaces who, since they have an understanding of like what cis means, they would just be like, yeah, I describe myself as cis. Whereas people over on the right might be like, well, I describe myself as like a Christian nationalist who like, they have their own labels and ways of identifying also. So I don't think it's fair to make it seem like it's just this like left-wing thing.
Yeah.
Well, just to be clear, to answer Gothix a bit more directly, I have no problem with either or. Like, if somebody identifies themselves as straight, it's like, cool. If I use the word cis because I teach, so I have to use like a little bit different language when I'm describing certain things, because I never really know like what groups of individuals I have myself in front of. So I have to keep things a little bit more inclusive as I can. But yeah, I personally have no issue with straight or cis. But.
Okay, I'm gonna have Gothix respond, then I'll bring it over to Connor, who hasn't talked yet.
Okay, cool. I actually had a brain fart, so this is going to be very short. But I will say that I do believe that, again, we're talking about immutable characteristics. I have no problem with people identifying. I do not care. It does not matter to me. It's just nothing. So the problem is that when people are identifying as something, it's now leading into like, this is the reality. This is the new reality. It is so bizarre to me, for example, to hear that passports are going to have gender X on it. And also, I would push back on Joe and say, yes, there are two genders. And I'll pull a page right out of Dave Chappelle's book and say, every man in this room came out of a vagina. But that's all I have to say.
That would be conflating sex and gender, by the way.
I can give y'all more fuel.
Connor.
Here we go. Let's party.
All right.
So number one, so just keep that in your mind, because I'm probably going to add a little bit to it, but hopefully I could be a little bit give you some more to sink your teeth into. All right. So number one, conservatives politics weaponizing their identity. Well, I mean, we may have started it, you may have started it, who gives a shit? The cat's out of the bag, okay? Where everybody's gonna be weaponizing identity for the rest of the fucking time, which is why I'm super excited about 2050, where I get to fucking be a minority in America, so I can fucking leverage that as a part of my I'd poll and fucking talk some shit on the internet. It's gonna be fucking great. I'm super excited about it. One of the things that is interesting, though, about how we conceptualize identity is this concept called like identifiers versus prophilicity. I'm not that familiar with the subject, but basically it's like a sociological theory that says that like some people use identifiers in order to identify attributes about themselves that they feel like reflect their reality. If you're talking about like biological sex, or if you're talking about skin tone, or if you're talking about racial categorization or something like that, they feel like there's something that's describing something that exists in the world. The digital age, though, this is the part of the sociological theory that I haven't really studied, is that we are now used to creating profiles. When you're talking about social media or video games or anything like that, you can kind of customize the features, benefits, and characteristics of your character. And this is something that's kind of opened up in like the personal space as well. It's like, who do you want to be is almost as important of a question as who are you? And we kind of have the tension between these two concepts. And that's where like language conveying information is probably the crux of what we're talking about, because very specifically it's like I'm kind of libertarian on like the gender shit too. So it's like, man, I can disassociate biological sex and manhood and womanhood, but men, women, non-binary folk, right? But then we get into that like neo-pronoun shit where, Gothix was talking about like a billion fucking genders and shit. And it's like, what does a neo-pronoun, what information does that convey that he, she, or they does not convey? And
I would actually agree with that, by the way. Like, that's one of the reasons I'm not in favor of neo-pronouns.
Right. And then that kind of gets into this thing where before, when I was traveling in right-wing spaces, no offense, leftists, but you don't know how to communicate your ideas very well. You kind of call everybody fucking assholes. And then basically, if we're not up to snuff on every single fucking thing that's come out on Twitter, Tumblr, or Twitch recently, then we're bigoted fucking assholes who just want to make everybody miserable and commit suicide. Whereas for me, it's like, I know I've traveled in enough leftist spaces that I know that y'all fight about this shit. So that's like the interesting part of this entire conversation, where it's like, you don't even fucking agree on any of this shit. But then that's where it's like, where do you get the cultural authority or the balls to say, like, hey, this is how it is now, and if you don't agree, shut the fuck up. And that's oftentimes the energy that you catch when you're not down with whatever's going on.
I got
sometimes, yeah.
I'm not gonna 3v1. I'm not gonna 3v1. I'm not gonna die on this hill. I want to get canceled.
I'm like, sometimes people. The thing is like, I don't know. I mean, I call people stupid sometimes, but I guess that just kind of would be on
aimless sack of shit, Hunter.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I should be canceled. Yeah.
Joey, what do you think?
Going back to what Connor was saying about the idea of like, maybe Gothix alluded this to, the idea of like identities being used for good or bad. Like, again, that's a frustration that I have with school boards right now and parents, because one thing that I'm always worried about is companies and institutions using people's identifiers as a means to push political ideas when it's very clear that these groups don't give a shit about them. Examples that I can use that like might upset a few liberals out there is like the NAACP, basically Black Lives Matter Incorporated. Although I will yield ground that some of the sister organizations that are on the ground with individuals are way better than those up top. It's the same frustration where it's like, we know that there are, I'm going to use like to load this a little bit, like we know that Black Americans get brutalized in different parts of the system. And unfortunately, these organizations that are sort of trying to herald this idea that Black Lives Matter don't give a shit about Black people. And then what's frustrating is that this is something that I think that conservative Black Americans can unify with Black leftists, and that we're both saying the same thing, but just at a different angle. Like, we both recognize that these organizations, like Black Lives Matter Incorporated, like the NAACP, generally speaking, don't give a shit about Black people. We know that the policies they try to implement and try to bring forth to the table is just another example of just like liberal bullshit that's not going to lead to any type of change. But then when it's like, okay, well, why don't we like sort of coalition build and galvanize on this idea to try to breach some type of change, then we get into like these weird disagreements. I was like, why can't we just fight on this unified thing? But yeah.
Yeah, I actually have a direct response for this, if I may. So oh my god, you like nailed a problem right on the head, which is the organization's pundits and commentariat class pretend to care about issues in order to profit from the conflict by making money off of people fighting, which is fine. Again, like I love to fucking fight. I'm on this goddamn panel. I'm on the fucking Hippy Dippy. I'm on Prime Kai Weekly. I love fighting about politics. It's one of my favorite things to do. But then how do we capitalize the actual energy and the actual problems that we're facing and turn it into like public momentum that actually has some level of change? And this is where I would say the libertarians or the anarchists or the liberals, small L liberals, they have an advantage because they say that it has to happen on the ground. It has to happen in communities. You have to go out into your local community, and if you want kids to be more proficient in an academic setting, then you have to be either a volunteer or a teacher. If you want law enforcement to be better, then you have to become a part of those institutions. And then that's kind of where I love everybody on this panel, but there are some very wealthy leftist commentators who say, no, don't go into your local community. The only way that we can achieve our goals is if we execute landlords, business owners, and have a socialist revolution. And that's kind of where it's like, fuck these motherfuckers. They're radicalizing tens of thousands of young people into basically a daily diet of 8 hours of arguing on Twitter and then thinking that they're going to better their lives in some kind of bloody revolution in the next 30 years.
Marx is going to come down.
Yeah, well,
I think Republicans are doing this right now.
Unfortunately, I agree
are doing
with
this
you.
right now with parents.
Yeah.
Like, I strongly believe Republicans are doing this right now with parents. Where if you look at these school board meetings, and the only reason why we got that DOJ memo in the first place is because there are literal parents and community members advocating for the violence of other school board members, teachers, and public officials. And then, like, I don't know, like, for example, there was a school board meeting in Florida that I watched on my stream where it's literally just a civilian yelling at their superintendent, holding his gun on the ready. And it's like, why the fuck are you, first off, why, I get it, Florida. I get it. But why do you have your firearm in a school board meeting? And then when you're talking to the superintendent, as you're arguing with him, talking about how he's going to take we're going to take this school back, you're holding your firearm. And then there's just a sheriff flanked on one side, a police officer flanked on the other. And then it's just like, well, this is totally observable reality right now. And that concerns me, where we have examples of parents and civilians participating in very violent behavior at school board meetings. And then when one organization acknowledges, like, hey, some school boards don't have the facilities to make sure that the people within their institution feel safe, they start saying, like, well, look at that. There's this government overreach. They're just painting parents as extremists. It's like, that's not the reality here. Like, it's very clear that in some areas in the United States, like, school board members and superintendents are not safe in their buildings. And then when they try to make the measures to try to, like, solve that problem, then people start getting upset.
I want to throw it over to Gothix, then Hunter, and then we got to start wrapping up with outros and such. I'll be right back. By the way, everyone behave. I need to use the bathroom. What were you saying, Gothix?
No, I was going to shove 2 questions in here for 2 different people. Is that okay?
You know what? Sure, but then the outros are just going to need to be people plugging themselves, okay?
Okay. I mean, okay. Okay. All right, cool. I wanted to know, Joe, really quick. So you're mentioning the school board and how their safety is on the line and parents are really going after them. I'm just curious, do you know why they're going after the school board? Because I'm a very analytical person and I like to understand the why.
COVID-19, gender affirmation, and CRT.
Okay. Do you understand in terms of I can sympathize, or are you like, hold, these parents are nuts?
I can't sympathize. I sympathize with them in a few reasons. The one reason is I think that it's unfortunate that these parents are now getting manipulated by individuals, whether that be individuals on Twitter like Chris Rufo or James Lindsay, Republicans like Glenn Youngkin, Donald Trump, and so Matt Gates and a bunch of other individuals, Marjorie Taylor Greene, I have sympathy towards that, where these parents, some of them, have very clear grievances, but their grievances towards the system are being manipulated for political gain. That I don't agree with.
I'm not sure I'm following. I just want to, by the way, I'm going to keep my closing arguments. I'm only going to stick to Joe for this one. So Joe, critical race theory, are you in favor of it?
It's not being taught in public schools, and it's up to the school curriculum to decide. It's not. It's not.
It
Depends how
definitely
you're defining critical race
It
theory.
would depend. Yeah, it also depends how you're defining it. What is true is that public schools are using works from Ibram X. Kendi and Robert DiAngelo in certain topics. That is true. But the actual things like CRT and Introduction, things by Kimberly Crenshaw and similar are not being taught in public schools.
Okay. I don't want to get too caught up in definitions and semantics and all that stuff. So I'm just going to say, like, regardless of what the definition is, I would be very cognizant of how parents are reacting. To me, it looks like a parent is trying to protect their cub, just like any parent would. You'd want to protect your child. So then I ask myself, why? What are they teaching exactly? They're teaching Black kids to be victims. They're teaching them to victimize themselves. And then you also have, on the other side of it, this idea of identity politics and power and privilege, and now white kids have to feel bad about themselves. There is a woman in my home state that spoke to the school board, and the school board is suing her for asking for more clarification.
I'm aware of the situation.
Yeah.
Yes,
so,
I'm aware of the situation.
And that is, again, a Marxist tactic where they put pressure and they intimidate people that are opposition.
Something again, like I don't want to get into semantics of her situation because I had to read up on it, but I'm almost certain it had to do with Freedom of Information Act and their lack of paying when they did FISA requests.
Okay,
so they obtained the information, and then I'd have to look it up. If I'm remembering, if we're talking about the same thing, the situation was they did a request to the Freedom of Information Act. The school board gave them that information, and then they didn't pay for that request. And the request was upwards of like $4,200 or something like that they didn't pay. So the school board sued for that payment. But again, we might be talking about a different thing.
Hunter, quickly, and then we have to do outros.
All right, I'll address two things I heard earlier. One, about Black Lives Matter, the organization. I agree that it is definitely far from what an ideal organization would look like. However, I think that by saying they don't care about Black people, or that, just kind of disregarding them entirely, I don't entirely agree with that. I think that at the very least, the Black Lives Matter organization helped to mobilize some of the overall movement that we saw, and with that came more public pressure to actually address some of these systemically racist issues that have been being talked about a lot. But it's now because of this that we're literally seeing legislation being brought forward. Biden's bipartisan bill, for example, is actually investing money in a Black community that was screwed over by a policy that wasn't intended to be racist, but ended up fucking over Black people disproportionately. So they're actually going and looking to try to ameliorate some of this systemic racism, partially because Black Lives Matter pushed this into the spotlight and got everyone talking about it. So that was the first thing. The second thing I wanted to bring up was when it comes to the critical race theory thing. Critical race theory, it's a lot of it is very trumped up. There's definitely parts of it that are probably silly that I wouldn't agree with. And it definitely also depends on how it's being taught. But I can reference a CRT scholar and professional who literally said himself that CRT should never be used, or it should not be taught in a way that is disparaging people for being white or whatnot. So if that were the case, that would actually be a contradiction of what critical race theory and how it's supposed to actually be taught. So I just wanted to clarify that.
We got to do outros now because we only have 4 minutes left before I have to move this to the next show I'm doing. So I'm going to start with Connor. Let's try to keep it short and sweet.
Okay. My name is Connor. I run a YouTube channel named Counterpoints. I am a science fiction, political philosophy nerd. I'm a Marine veteran, a law enforcement veteran. I love Warhammer 40,000. So if you like politics, debates, science fiction, movie breakdowns, violence in general, then I got something for you. Type in Counterpoints common spelling into YouTube. You can find me. Appreciate you, Dylan. Lots of fun.
Thank you very much. I'm going to throw it over to Hunter.
Yeah, you can find me just on my Twitch channel. It's Hunter Avalone. I've been really trying to pick up on Twitch lately. Thanks again for having me on, Dylan. And again, if anyone wants to come on and debate me, Gothix, Connor, you guys are welcome to come on the Discord sometime if you ever want to talk. So yeah, thanks again, Dylan, for having me on. Thanks for the
Happy
combo,
to
guys.
have you. Joe Lewis?
Yeah, twitch.tv/Joe Lewis. The O's is 0. If people have any disagreements with me, feel free to send me a message on Twitter, Discord. I'm always open to have conversations moving forward. So yeah, thanks for having. Also, Gothix, movie recommendation. It's hot garbage, but it's a low key banger. Malignant just came out.
That movie's actually awesome. I love that one.
That was terrible. I was so
No,
angry.
it's all.
All
Oh,
right.
I guess we can fight.
There was so much Marxism in that one for me. But
My turn.
Gothix? Yep, it is your
Okay,
turn.
cool. Thank you so much for having me. This was very nice. I enjoyed this little back and forth. You can follow me, Gothix TV on YouTube and on Twitter. If you're interested, I actually interviewed someone that grew up during the Communist Revolution under Mao Zedong's regime. If you'd like to check it out, it's on my channel. Also, if you want to learn about how identity politics is weaponized, I would recommend Color Communism and Common Sense. And if you're curious about the tactics that I mentioned, you can read Rules for Radicals. And that's it.
Stolinsky. And I would like to thank everybody for coming on today. I know it's sometimes difficult to challenge yourself and talk to people who disagree with you, but I do deeply appreciate it, and I know the viewers did as well. You all have a blessed day, and you're all welcome back on my show at any point in the near future. See you guys later.
Bye.
Catch y'all.
Yeah, take care.
All right, y'all. Nice and short and to the sweet. I actually love 90-minute panels. Holy crap. Could I just do that over and over again? I would love to do in and out 90 minutes, 2 hours. Oh, that is so much better than like a 4-hour slog. But I'm going to check in. We had a really big show. Lots of people showed up. I think Twitch is down. So we're just going to check in on YouTube chat. So, if you liked it, go ahead, like, share, subscribe, dislike all that YouTube nonsense. Go ahead and follow and subscribe if you're not already done so. If you want to do a YouTube membership, that is activated. If you want to do a Twitch subscription, that is activated. If you want to do a donation, there is a link in the Twitch profile, even though Twitch was down today. If you want to go onto a Patreon, it's patreon.com/counterpoints. If you want to do a super chat, I will answer your questions. If you just want to ask me a question in general, you do not need to pay any money. I will answer all questions until we get caught up. Do @Counterpoints in the chat right now. And then spell out Counterpoints. And I will go ahead and answer all questions until we run out of time. And then I'm going to bounce out. So, thanks for joining me. I sincerely appreciate it. I love being on the Hippy Dippy semifinal. I think we proved ourselves to do pretty well. Obviously, we want to get onto the big show eventually, but it is what it is. So let's go for it. All right. Kung Fu Joe @Counterpoints. Where's the right CRT? Ask any leftists if they want their kids to learn about conservative values to two-parent households, cisgendering, being responsible, etc. We could fight about conservative values. Part of the reason why I was memeing about, we need, more dudes in school is because I think dudes, on the whole, tend to be more, on average, right? On average, I'm not saying every dude is like this. But on average, dudes do tend to be a little bit more, violent in a disciplined way. They tend to be more conservative when it comes to certain issues. They can teach boys. They can deal with rough and tumble play. They can deal with fights a little bit better. So I'm not saying that all women are incompetent or all men are Joe Rogan, who are going to take your kids out into the woods and teach them how to hunt 1,200-pound bears. But I am saying that actually having a gender balance in the schools would be interesting. So, head for Hydra, Elkine Cooper says, @Counterpoints, I really want to hear your opinions of Dune if you've had a chance to see it. So, unfortunately, my father-in-law, he asked me if we could do a bro date to go see Dune. I was literally going to watch it on HBO this weekend. But I think I have to wait because I'm going to go on a bro date. So, I think it's going to be cool. And, I got to wait. So as soon as I watch it, I'll go ahead and let you know. And then also in the future, I'll go ahead and break that down. Twisted says, good job @Counterpoints. Thank you kindly. I sincerely appreciate it. I try to be reasonable while still throwing a couple of punches out there. Oh, and then, by the way, guys, if you just want to jump onto the other show or whatever, if you want to jump on Hippy Dippy, Catch Destiny in the opening or outro, I'm not going to hold it against you. If you got questions, I'm going to answer them. If you don't have questions, don't worry about me. I'll be fine. For Elemental @Counterpoints, a cudgel is a weapon. Shake my head. You failed the entire debate. Lol. Gullivar @Counterpoints. You're silly. Gullivar @Counterpoints. What color of woman's thong do you wear when you eat your crayons? Purple. Purple's my favorite color. Head for Hydra. I really want to hear your opinions of Dune if you've had a chance to see it. I already answered that one. Cullivar at Counterpoints, do you watch the Senate panel grilling the crap out of the head of the DOJ? They got in some good fights. I have not. Maybe I'll watch that later. Ian Penner at Counterpoints, have you noticed how many progressives there are in the Discord? I feel like most conservative person there, and my values pretty much align with yours. It's a bit surprising. Ian Penner, that is not your fault. Basically what happened, because I am debating in leftist spaces, a majority of the people who came in to the Discord or whatever, they were all leftists who hated other leftists. It's not your fault. I would say hang out with Taze primarily. We also have a few cops, a few veterans in there as well. So I would just hang out with them, talk with them or whatever. But I mean, honestly, like I'll try to get in there and try to give you some backup. So I'm sorry that we have so many woke progressives in there. Big Haas at Counterpoints. Have you listened to James Lindsay podcast in depth? That may change your mind on the systemic racism issue. Yeah, maybe. I'm going to watch the debate between him and friend of the channel, Jangle Science Lad. We'll see how we do. I think he misuses terms sometime, but I'm always interested to listen to new people. Arakota at Counterpoints, yet another panel where you didn't make a glorious propaganda to the conquer down to the Panama plan. Yeah, unfortunately, I do have this glorious plan to conquer down to the Panama Canal and a little bit south of there in order to create a grand America. It didn't come up during the identity politics debate, but maybe if I pulled like a CTV, I could have shoehorned it in there. Christian Valeris at Counterpoints is in almost exclusively left-wing circles. Yeah, it's kind of tough. Arakota, sad. Meme name at Counterpoints. Do you think the social justice cancel culture debate has gotten too needlessly complex to reconcile it with your average person? Is waiting on newer generations the best solution? Yes and no. I think I can explain it, but you know, it is what it is. It might be too complex for some people, but I think I can break it down in like 10 to 15 minutes if somebody has an ear for it. Head for Hydra. Hey, it's good to wait for a solid bro date at Counterpoints. Thanks. I appreciate your patience. Arakota at Counterpoints. We fully expect a review of Dune. Awesome. I'm looking forward to it, actually. Wade at Counterpoints. Seen Southern's new video? No, but I've watched a few of her most recent videos, so it's been good times. And then Godzilla Megatron at Counterpoints. Do you consider Black Americans as citizens of the USA, or are you more of the type of citizen that the USA needs? Do you consider Black Americans as citizens of the USA, or are you more of the type of citizen that USA needs? No, I'm not a Christian nationalist or an ethno-nat. Jesus Christ, Godzilla. I think Black Americans are citizens, you fucking lunatic. Calabar at Counterpoints, I'll send you the link for the Senate thing. The Louie Lou at Counterpoints, is Dune meant to be political, or is it just that people are interested in it? No, I mean, I don't think that it's supposed to be political specifically, but it's supposed to make some broad strokes commentary on politics and power. So yeah, like I am super Hassan's favorite prostitute. Thank you for coming over from Adam and Sitch. I appreciate you. I saw you in that chat. Shit. Sorry, I completely lost my train of thought because Hassan's favorite prostitute distracted me with their fucking name. Yeah, so I don't think Dune is supposed to be commentating on modern politics. Jesus Christ, that's funny. Hank25 at Counterpoints, there's quite a few of leftists who are not woke and finally found someone who try and make people talk to each other. That's why I'm here. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so like I try to be a bridge between these people. I think Gothix, like no dig on her. I would probably try to speak to her in the future. But like I think she overuses Marxist in ways that it doesn't necessarily make sense. And it's not that it's not leftist. Like I think you could make like leftist progressive, or even if you were going to say like there's the bourgeois and there's the proletariat, and the bourgeois have the power and we have to abolish the class of the bourgeois and then we'll have peace in the world. If you were to say that was similar to like critical race theory or whatever, where it's like there's white people on top because of systemic racism and power dynamics, and we need to abolish the power dynamics, that way everybody is just people, and there's going to be people who are entrenched in the system who are going to want to defend it, and then there's going to be people who want to abolish the system and they're going to be attacked. I can see how like a leftist lens or a Marxist lens, the formula has been extracted and applied to race relations. But at the same time, like I don't think that using the term Marxist is the best one. But anyways, it's okay. Hassan's favorite prostitute. Have you seen my Hassan Chan? I'm not going to make rent at the brothel he purchased me at, and if I don't bring my daddy his money, I don't get food. All right, everybody, help out Hassan's favorite prostitute. I think they're at the Artemis in Germany. So if any of you are in Germany, then go ahead and visit the brothel. See if you can get her out of her sex work. Maybe you can be a based like Groyper Christian nationalist and marry her and get her redeemed in the eyes of God. So you can stop her from her degenerate ways and make an honest woman out of her. So I wish you luck, Hassan's favorite prostitute. I'll try to get this $5 back to you so you can survive. I'm sorry that you felt the need to give me $5 so I could shout out your plight to the world. Ericoda at Counterpoints, have you seen the corridor videos of their realistic lightsaber battle? No. Have you seen the corridor video of their realistic lightsaber battle? No, I haven't, and I'm kind of holding off. I want to see it, but I don't want to ruin it for myself either. Common Cure. I have a question regarding immigration and natives. With all the people coming into the country as of late, do you think that would be of concern to the native tribes and their land here in America? Maybe, maybe not. They're kind of already fucked. So I don't think Native Americans are necessarily going to notice if the United States of America becomes more populous. And then it's kind of like a meme answer, but honestly, with like Central and South American immigration, it seems inevitable that we're going to have like the mix of the power between like Central America and North America, and then some of Central America and South America. So I just say, fuck it. Like, let's invade or peacefully annex down to the Panama Canal. I think it's called the Davian Strait, is something that Tiberius D brought up. We can annex down to there, create a border. It'll be 90 miles wide. We'll just have crazy aggressive Coast Guard around there. And then, Colombia can reinstitute Gran Colombia. They can have a Northern South American Union, the NSA, the NSAU. Which could be like Colombia and everything north of the Amazon, and then there could be like a Central and South American Union, which is like Brazil, Argentina, Chile, and the GUE countries, and then hopefully between there we could get all our shit together when it came to like drug policy, trade policy, all that kind of shit. I see it as inevitable. I understand like Anglos and fucking European Americans are super concerned about mixing with Hispanics, but I think it's inevitable, and they just need to kind of get off their fucking high horse. It's the Americas. We should form a 1.2 billion strong functional society. And if there's things that are standing in the way of our functioning, then we need to knock those things down. So, Hassan's favorite prostitute at Counterpoints. You know me here by another name. Ha ha ha. All right, excellent. I'm happy you were already here. The Louis Lou. Christians are anti-black now. Not necessarily, but it's kind of like a Groiper thing, which is the Nick Fuentes crowd, to be like race isn't everything, but race isn't nothing. And then they're pretty strict, like segregationists, so they're kind of weird about it. EM Petter at Counterpoints. Dune actually has a lot of stuff taken from Evola's spiritual work. It just doesn't have most of the insane stuff. Makes for a cool aesthetic, at least. Awesome. I am getting excited for it. The reviews have been good. Hank25 at Counterpoint. Sorry, I'm progressive. Wrong word. No, it's all good. Well, it's all good. All right, Cullivar at Counterpoints. How much of this parent thing do you think will affect the 2022 elections? Zero. Zero. Twisted at Counterpoints. Oh, thank you, 09YDo. Twisted at Counterpoints. You a fan of Philip K. Dick? He's my favorite sci-fi author. You would have to give me the... did he do The Expanse? Philip Dick. I feel... Dick sci-fi. Let me take a look. He wrote 44 novels and 121. What's his most famous books? No, that doesn't look like the fucking Expanse author. Holy shit. Philip Dick sci-fi famous books. Why isn't there just a fucking list? I'm sorry, I'm not trying to bore y'all to death. I just wanted... Philip Dick sounds so familiar. I just wanted to read it. 6 essential Philip K. Dick novels. Let's take a look. And by the way, like, you're getting enlightened too, so just have Destiny playing in the background. You can jump over there and watch him and Haas fucking yell at each other in a second. Do androids dream of electronic sleep? The Man in the High Castle. Interesting. I'm familiar with... Oh, A Scanner Darkly! I love A Scanner Darkly, the movie. I would love to read the book. Holy shit. Awesome. Yeah, cool. I need to check out Philip K. Dick. I love The Scanner Darkly. So, interesting. 09YDo says, love your work. Hope your back is better. On a side note, I find it hilarious how Hunter can go from a standard reactionary to someone who denies culture is a thing. P.S. Download Ace 4. If you mean Ace Combat 4, yeah, sure, absolutely. And 09YDo, I absolutely appreciate you. Yeah, he did jump a little far left, but hey, maybe we can suck him into the centrist pipeline. I'm excited for it. Head for Hydra at Counterpoints. Have you read the Southern Reach trilogy? Dude that directed Ex Machina made a movie about the first book. Highly recommend. Okay, cool. Definitely hit me up on the Discord. Definitely hit me up on the on Twitter, and I'll check it out. General Ballsack says Total Recall. I love Total Recall. I haven't seen the 2010 one, but I have seen obviously the original. And then Total Recall, if that's Philip K. Dick, then I'd love to read that as a book because I'm sure it's excellent. Vale at Counterpoints. What would you do if when you okay, he said yes, would you go off? What do you do when you okay, he said yes, would you go off? I'm not sure what that's in reference to. I'm sorry. General Ballsack at Counterpoint. Minority Report. I loved Minority Report, and not so much because I actually thought Tom Cruise was good for the movie, but because the concept was so interesting and it had so many moral implications that it was interesting. Man in the High Castle, I've heard great things about, and then obviously Scanner Darkly, I've actually watched and loved. So, 09Y2 says Age of Empires 4. Yeah, fuck it. I was kind of thinking, so Taze, for those of you who don't know for the channel, Taze, our editor, because of the contributions of our members, very specifically Vici, want to shout out Vici, but also a whole bunch of you, Samantha Banana, Turk, T-E-R-K, he's a PC guy, and then obviously the money that you guys have donated. I have about maybe like $1,100 worth of computer parts right here, and then I have another $300 to $500 on the way. Taze is coming from Las Vegas in order to build this computer. He insisted that he come out and do it. Once he does that, we're going to be able to play video games while streaming, and I am super fucking excited. Super excited to be able to play like Space Breed on stream. That's probably going to be the first. We'll go ahead and I promised that we would do the Necromunda game. I'm absolutely going to do that on stream, and then I'm super excited to do other stuff like Doom 2016 or Age of Empires or some of the real-time strategy games from back in the day, like either Command and Conquer or the Dawn of War series. So I'm super fucking pumped. It's going to be a great time. So so I want to thank you. Okay. I want to thank 09Y2. I want to thank Hassan's Favorite Prostitute. I want to thank Vici. I want to thank ZJW. I want to thank you, EM Penner, for becoming a member. I want to thank the guys on Patreon. It's just amazing the amount of support that we've already received, and the fact that like people are enabling us to create more in the future. Obviously, the goal is to do this full time, but even the support that we've received while we're small time is fucking amazing. Thank you guys. Hassan's Favorite Prostitute. Hold on. I'm getting ahead of myself. Ian Penner, what do you think of portrayals of military tech in The Expanse? I love the hard sci-fi stuff where it's all fighting is done with nukes at massive distances. Yeah, so I read the first Expanse book. I need to watch the TV series. There was some technical things that rubbed me wrong in the book, just because it was like, if he knew about military tactics, he wouldn't have said that. So that fucked up my suspension of disbelief. And then also one of the things that fucked up my suspension of disbelief was like a zombie virus. Sorry for spoilers. A zombie virus turning into a like black goo creature that had some level of sentience and was trying to replicate a speed run from a girl who was first infected with the virus. It's not that it's not interesting to consider, but when you have fucking like blood zombie virus monsters chasing you, I don't give a fuck about this random girl who got murdered in the belt and her consciousness because it was the first thing that made contact with the zombie disease is trying to replicate some kind of shit. So anyways, Endernax, I did not auto delete your troll comment. I'm very happy that you're here, by the way. You need to start fucking streaming again. But I did not auto delete. YouTube did it, so you must have put in some groiper words or something. Okay. Hassan's Favorite Prostitute at Counterpoints. Ever heard of Stephen Michael Davis? He's a friend of Sitch and Adam and a libertarian. He would be a fun conversation. Maybe Adam could help you. I'll harass Steve. Yeah, let's do it. The more people that we can actually get into the right wing, the better. I would love to, while I'm probably to the left of a lot of libertarians and a lot of authoritarian right-wingers, I wouldn't mind introducing them to my philosophy, not because Endernax says they were groiper words. Not because I'm expecting to convince everybody of my worldview, but because I think that if they could incorporate some of the things that I said, it would be the best part of what I've learned from debating the left while not agreeing with everything the left has to say. So if I can help people at least understand, that would be cool. So anyways. Parker Bednarik at Counterpoints. I got a ritual kit as a gift for Halloween. Any advice for summoning the dead? No, I have none. I am not interested in having COVID zombies. Thank you. The Louis Lou at Counterpoints. I feel like maybe using Christian in response to being anti-black is taking niche part of Christian and expanding it to rep Christianity. I wouldn't say that's a good idea generally. Yeah, I didn't mean Christian conservatives. Christian conservatives and Christian nationalists are not the same thing. And unfortunately, even if you were like a positive Christian nationalist, the Groypers have kind of tainted that. I would consider Endernax, maybe he doesn't consider himself a Christian nationalist, but I do consider him a nationalist and a religious person, or at least somebody who wants to live religious values. So I would consider Endernax a non-toxic version of a Christian nationalist or a religious nationalist. So I would say ditch Nick Fuentes and go watch Endernax. Too bad he doesn't put out content routinely because he's a fucking asshole. EM Penner at Counterpoints. Did you just read the Expanse books or watch the show? The show is incredible. Yeah, I haven't watched the show. I've just read the book so far. So I read the first book and then I haven't read the other ones in the series. So y'all are fucking crazy. There's 77 of you. I'm sure there would be 10 of you on Twitch if I was on Twitch right now. There's 90 of you. You need to go watching our boy fucking Destiny or Haas. You can pick Haas if you want. You need to go watch those motherfuckers demolish each other. So I want to thank you. Thank you to the people who donated. Thank you to the people who are members. Thank you to the people who are part of the Patreon. Thank you to the people who have helped us get the computer. Thank you to the people who help out with the channel. Thank you to the people in the Discord. If you want to get into the Discord, go ahead and DM me on Twitter or DM me on Discord, which you don't have. DM me on Twitter or send it to my email. If you want Discord, counterpointsconnor@gmail.com. You can email me there, or you can do at Twitter @_counterpoints_. All right. So I do love y'all. Thank you for your time. Go watch that shit. I'm gonna catch you in a bit. 09Y do if the Christian nationalists they should move to Lebanon where the president has to be Christian. Lol. Yeah. Dope. All right. Appreciate y'all. Go support Destiny. Be trolls in the chat. I would love to keep you as an audience, but I'm not going to. Have a great night, guys. Bye.